you have to measure it in terms of the value to individual consumers whom you know are looking at it. In other words, when I try to measure the popularity of a particular story in a newspaper or even a particular television program, the truth is I don't know who's looking at it. Mm-hmm. I put it out there, and if I put an advertisement in a newspaper, I really don't know if the eyeballs are looking at it or not. But in the computer system where somebody has clicked on an advertisement, at that moment in time, you know the person is consuming it because they clicked on it, so you know you have their attention. And the same thing holds true for stories and the consumption of stories. You know when they're being consumed. So the best way to measure the value is in some sense the combination of the volume of consumption, because each one of those represents what we call a hit, and the other is to, in some sense, measure the electronic word of mouth that it subsequently generates. Namely, I very often in my mail find stories that people send me saying, "Did you see this?" And they send me as part of the email a story that somebody's written.
E como é que se mede esse boca a boca?
You measure the word of mouth by the consumption of the story. If the story is stored in some central server, how many times is it being accessed? How many times is it being downloaded? Which is not completely accurate because somebody can download it and replicate it and send it. So that's a low estimate. Mm-hmm. But if you're getting high consumption, that's a pretty good measure.
Luciano.
Luciano Pronti. O que o MIT está desenvolvendo no sentido da telepresença, ou seja, videoconferência, realidade virtual e internet, aplicada à educação? Num país como o Brasil, nós temos graves problemas de infraestrutura educacional, como as novas tecnologias podem desempenhar uma função social na formação das pessoas?
Well, telepresence to me means that we're trying to transmit human presence so that when I'm talking to you over a telecommunication system, it really looks and feels like we're together. And we're trying to use every technique possible to make it is indistinguishable from physical presence. And there are many reasons to do that. There are personal reasons, there are corporate reasons, there are reasons because you don't want to travel. There are all sorts of reasons why the transmission of human presence is an important thing. In the education system, I'm less convinced that we have to wait for that. I think that the human presence is the compassion that a human being can show to another human being in terms of how that person is learning. And if we think back to our own childhood and we think, who were the best teachers we had? If you think of your favorite teacher in primary school, it probably wasn't somebody who knew a lot about math or English or Portuguese or history or geography. It was probably somebody who knew a lot about you and was pretty good at recognizing when you were frustrated, recognizing what you understood, encouraged you, gave you self-esteem. All of these things that make good teachers. I'm not convinced you can put that in a box and transmit it. I think we still need very good teachers, and we still need humans to teach humans and kids to teach kids and so on. But what we can transmit and what we can let kids access is sort of this extraordinary body of knowledge that previously was transmitted by printing books and putting books on trucks and sending the books to schools and then putting the books in libraries, which is in fact a very expensive and inefficient way to move that body of knowledge around. So I think more of the internet, not so much as a presence issue, because I think that for the short term at least, that is still going to be very much human to human, but as a way of doing what books did very badly. Books are not a very efficient way to move bits around. So I haven't personally sort of spent too much time on the telepresence as it applies to education, though obviously the reverse would be to allow a child to transmit themselves and basically experience living in Tibet instead of reading a book or a screen about Tibet. And that's a few ways away. That's a few years away.
Negroponte, eu queria que você falasse um pouco sobre tempo, né? Que eu imagino que deva ser uma questão muito importante na sua vida. A gente percebeu que você está aqui em São Paulo enlouquecido e tirou um tempinho para vir aqui falar com a gente, né? Na era industrial, se falava que tempo era dinheiro, né? Time is money, né? Na era digital, tempo vai ser o quê? Mais dinheiro ainda? Eu queria saber o seu pensamento sobre tempo, inclusive na sua vida pessoal. Como que você faz para encontrar tempo livre, por exemplo, para não fazer nada? Se você se interessa por isso também.
Well, you know, loosely speaking, you spend the first part of your life using time to make money, and you use the last part of your life using money to make time. Okay. And I'm at the crossover point. I'm where they cross. And I don't think of things in terms of free time or not free time. It's much more intermixed. And I think this is what's going to happen to most people's time. Today we live a life that is much more rhythmical. You know, you work this thing, you play this thing, you work on weekdays, you play on weekends, you do this, and there is not only a rhythm, but it's a rhythm that everybody is synchronized with that rhythm. So we all commute at the same time in traffic, we all commute back in traffic, and so you have a rhythm and it's synchronized. And I think both the rhythm and, more importantly, the synchronization will change, and that people will live much more asynchronous lives. They will do things at different times, and we won't find the same obedience that is going on now for reasons that have to do with telecommuting, the ability to access things, to shop 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're just going to see a lot of life becoming much more asynchronous and much more intermingled. I mean, as I was coming here to the studio, I was reading my email in the car, and I had, you know, one from my son, one from the president of MIT, they're just all intermingled in there, and I just read them sort of in order, and your sort of personal life and your business life and all these things start to have much more intermixing.
Quanto tempo você fica diante da tela? Você encontra tempo para baixar as ondas mentais também, para ficar mais relaxado, mais numa posição não tão agitada também? Isso para você é importante?
Antes que você responda, posso emendar uma pergunta? É verdade que você não gosta de ler?
It's true, I don't like to read, yes. But that's because I find it hard. I'm a slow reader. But everything I read on a computer and so on. But they're somewhat different questions. In fact, I've sort of lost your question while I was thinking.
Quanto tempo você fica diante da tela?
Yeah. I spend a lot of time. I probably spend between 4 and 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and I've been doing that for 30 years. But here's the good part of the story, is I spend no time on the telephone, 0, and I spend no time in meetings. And when I ski, which I do a lot of, I log in and spend a couple of hours, and then I go skiing. And then I come back and I log in and spend a couple of hours. And if you followed my life, lifestyle's pretty good. I mean, I spend time in places that are really